بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق وأعز المرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين، سيما بقية الله روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء. قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يسألونك عن الأهلة قل هي مواقيت للناس والحج. آمنا بالله. صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد. Dear Mu'mineen and Mu'minat, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. On this last evening of the month of Ramadan, al-Layla al-Akhira min al-Shahr al-Kareem, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive us if He has not forgiven us thus far in this holy month of Ramadan. We ask Him desperately to forgive us, and we ask Him to accept whatever we have done, the little that we have done in this holy month of Ramadan. تقبل منا هذا القليل بأحسن القبول. The little that we have done, we ask Him to accept it from us, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst the marhumeen, those who receive the special mercy from Him in this holy month of Ramadan. A question that I'm sure comes to many people's minds about the Eid and whether or not we are having Eid tomorrow. And some of you may be excited to know that it is Eid. Others, on the other hand, may be hoping that we have another day of أنفاسكم فيه تسبيح ونومكم فيه عبادة, and your dua in it is mustajaba, your dua in it is answered. أنفاسكم فيه تسبيح, your breath in the month of Ramadan is glorification of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and sleeping during the month of Ramadan is an act of worship. So much blessings from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Therefore some may be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we have the opportunity to complete the iddah, to complete the count. And what do I mean by that? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala declared Shahr Ramadan being the Shahr of Siyam, in the ayah that Ismail earlier recited, شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. In that same ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in fact in this ayat, that the context of which is fasting, siyam and Shahr Ramadan, in there He says وَلِتُكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةَ, and so that you can complete the count of days. And ikmalul idda in Arabic is to complete the 30 days of a lunar month. So a lunar month is either 29 days or 30 days. A complete lunar month is 30 days. Quran is saying وَلِتُكْمِلُوا الْعِدَّةَ. Therefore, if one is unable to determine that the month of Ramadan is over through the crescent moon being sighted, which is what we read in the following ayat. يَسْأَلُونَكَ, the ayah I started with, in fact they ask you about the hilals, the crescents. يَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ. Ahilla is the plural of hilal, the crescents. They ask you about the crescents. tell them it is timing for people. قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ وَالْحَجِّ. And it's also timing of Hajj. So Hilal is most significant in Hajj. Why in Hajj? Because Wuquf in Arafah has to happen on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah. And day of Eid al-Adha has to happen on the 10th of Dhul Hijjah. If Wuquf doesn't happen on the 9th, that Hajj is not completed. You can fast the whole month of Ramadan, even if you skip the last day by traveling or by mistake or whatever. You fasted the month of Ramadan, yes? But if you don't stand on Arafat during the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, you have not done Hajj. So it's very specific. That's why the ayah says, قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ, and specifically وَالْحَجِّ, more significant during Hajj. So during Hajj actually it's more significant for believers to determine the month. And amazingly, every year we have the government in charge of that part of the world. They see the moon, the crescent, a day or two before everybody else could even possibly see it. I think they announced that they saw the moon tonight as well, which was impossible scientifically. So they do ruin people's Hajj almost every year. Alhamdulillah, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this trial. It's a test. These difficulties are part of the test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nonetheless, alhamdulillah, this month and during this time and in the places that we live, we have the ability to practice our religion freely and not be persuaded by any king or government to tell us when to start your month of Ramadan and when to end the month of Ramadan. We choose for ourselves and we use our aql, our intellect, we use the evidence put forth before us, and we use the verdicts of our scholars to determine which method we're going to go by. So I'm going to give you some background here. Some of you may have watched videos, presentations. I shared a presentation with one of the brothers who shared it with the community, and hopefully you had a chance to look at that presentation. Nevertheless, the very simple facts that I'm going to share with you tonight regarding Eid is that, or regarding the beginning of a new month in the Islamic calendar, in the lunar calendar, is that if we are able to see the crescent moon, the month is over and the next month starts. If we're unable to see it, we count 30 days and that's how we go to the next month. The difficulty lies is when one is unable to see it locally but others can see it in other locations. That's one scenario. Another scenario is one is unable to see it locally but they can see it anywhere in the world. That's another scenario. Unable to see it locally but science tells us that it is definitely visible. That's another scenario. So there are different scenarios that we may counter, and we have to know how to deal with them. First of all, if science tells us that it is certainly visible, it's definitely 100% visible in your area, given obviously no obstacles, no barriers like clouds, you could see the crescent moon. If that's what science tells me, based on our experience nowadays, if scientific calculations give us such level of confidence, we can go by that, and with yaqeen we can start the next month. So if tonight in Florida or in this part of the world or wherever you may be, if tonight or the night of the next month, if it's the first, if you're expecting the month of Shawwal, if we were in an area where science told us you could definitely see the moon, we had no problems. We could definitely announce the next day to be the day of Eid or the start of the new month. That's one scenario. The other scenario is we're in an area that science does not give us that confidence. There is basically there's reasonable doubt whether or not it can be seen. Before I continue to this one, there's another extreme. Science tells me it cannot be seen at all. Okay? Science tells me it cannot be seen at all. And somebody says, I saw the moon. How do we deal with that? What do you think? Possible? No. I'll tell you, in today's world, with our experience, if somebody tells me I saw the moon after the science told me it's impossible to see the moon, I will say you're hallucinating. You're seeing something else. Okay, it's not the month of the moon. Okay, and that's a fact. That is what we're dealing with. So tonight, somebody in some part of the world, in Arabia, saw the moon. They're hallucinating. They're seeing something. So somebody put some picture for them, and they took the picture off. Anyway. So science does help us. If somebody says, why don't you use science? We do use science. Science does help us. If it gives us certainty either way, we go with it. So if ilm tells us definitely you can see the moon, we go with that. And if science tells us definitely you cannot see the moon, we also go with that. Even if somebody comes and tells me, it has not happened that anyone trustworthy would come and do that. We know that from experience. If somebody does, we would say he is imagining things, or he saw something. You know, sometimes people see some cloud reflecting and they said, I saw the moon. You know, those who have done moon sighting, practiced it, they know what I'm referring to. Sometimes some cloud looks like a crescent, and with a bit of reflection it looks like they saw the moon. They look again and other people come and say, no, you're imagining, that's not the crescent moon. So if science says yes, we can see it for sure, we go with that. If science says no, we cannot see it for sure, we cannot see it, then we also go with that. What if science says we don't know, we're not sure, it could be seen but maybe not? That is the area that we're unsure, unclear. This is where we have to actually go out and see the moon. And if we cannot see it locally, can we apply some other areas visibility, if they see it in other areas? Some scholars, they say if that happens and they see the moon anywhere in the world, it's enough. There are scholars who say anywhere in the world. There are scholars who say if you share the night with any city that saw the moon, that's enough. Okay. So if they do end up seeing the moon tonight anywhere in North America, or even anywhere in South America, or even in Hawaii, if they end up seeing the moon in Hawaii, okay, which we do share some parts of the night with them. For scholars, for followers of, for instance, Ayatollah Khou'i or Ayatollah Wahid al-Khurasani, that is sufficient. Tomorrow they cannot fast. Tomorrow is their day of Eid. Okay, if you follow any of these maraja that go with the sharing of the night with somebody who saw the moon, then you cannot fast tomorrow. It's not optional anymore. It's actually haram for you to fast tomorrow. It will be your day of Eid where you have to break your fast, and if there is a Salatul Eid, you participate. If not, you can do it individually, even whichever way. So that's one scenario. We've had people in the past who followed Maraja that go with that, and they had to do their individual prayers in such circumstances. Other Maraja say, no, you have to see the moon locally or somewhere that gives you certainty. Pay attention, please. Somewhere that gives you certainty that if you had no barriers, you could have seen the moon. Okay, so either locally or somewhere that gives you yaqeen, itmi'nan, certainty that you could have seen the moon. Where is that somewhere? Today, with scientific calculations, they categorize certain areas to say they share similar variables, and therefore if you're in one of these areas. However, and I want to say something that I have myself had a different approach, and I've changed my approach since I had more experience. So I want to share something here. Some of you may know from the past. In the past, I would say, if you're in, say, the blue zone, which is based on moon sighting, and somewhere in the blue zone they saw the moon, it suffices. My assumption was that gives you certainty. With more experience and more research and speaking with people who have done years and years of sighting the moon and basically experienced how it works, I learned that that zone, that blue zone, is too big of a zone, which realistically should be divided in more zones, because it is giving the entire an entire area that has many variations in the variables, or a lot of gap in the variables. It's giving them all, putting them all under the one umbrella. When in practical experience, we figured that that's not how it works. I'll give you a very practical example that occurred in the past. Here in Florida, we had this experience. Some of you may recall Eid al-Adha, I believe it was, where we could not see the moon for the beginning of the month, yet they were able to see it in I think San Diego, somewhere in California, the furthest southern point, if I'm not mistaken, in California. They were able to see the moon. At that point, we really had to reassess. Does their visibility or does their sighting of the moon give us certainty that we could have seen the moon? Bayni wa bayn Allah, I could not say so. Because their moon or their crescent, by the way, every area has its own crescent, just like we have our own sunrise and sunset, different times and different variables. Similarly, every area has its own sun and moonrise and moonset, and the variables of the moon are different. How high from the horizon, the angle from the horizon, the angle from the sun, the illumination, and so on, they're different. So their moon is actually 3 hours older, and 3 hours is significant for those with experience. They know what I'm referring to. And it's the variables are very different. Therefore, does their visible sighting give us yaqeen, certainty that we could see the moon? I could not say so. And the rule of thumb with this whole issue, the crescent moon and so on, which the Prophet ﷺ and the Imams of Ahlul Bayt made it very simple for people. I don't know why we sometimes complicate things for ourselves. They said, you see it, you start the month. You don't see it, you complete the count. Ikmalul Idda. Very simple. And when they said that other people see it in other areas, the Imams would often tell people, they see it for themselves, you see it for yourself. You see it in your area. Keep it simple. We can see it here, it's sufficient. Close by, that gives us certainty, it suffices. If it's not, then if we don't have that certainty, then there's no, we don't have hujjah to start a new moon. Therefore, it is not a problem. Some people were worried about, what if it's doubtful, can I fast that day? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want things difficult for anyone. It's simple. I don't have a clear proof that it's a new moon, so I complete my month. Now, what if somebody follows a marja that allows seeing the moon with the telescope? That's another one. Yes, you have a question? Yeah, I shared that, the sharing of the night. Yeah, sharing of the night is what some have the opinion of ufuq everywhere in the world. Okay, there is one opinion everywhere in the world. Another one is, which is more prominent these days, is sharing of the night. Some of them the night, some of them most of the night. Atla Khoi had some of the night. Others, like Atla Wahid, says most of the night, so it should be at least half of the night, more than half of the night. Okay, so sharing, but it's still a big, basically it would give us all the way to Europe. Even if they see it, I think it would suffice to some parts of Europe, not all of Europe, even if they see it in California. But America is fine. So sharing some of the nights, sharing all of the night, these are the, other scholars, which is the opinion of Atla Sistani and others who do not accept that, they say it has to be seen in your area. And the only time you can use other cities' sighting is when it gives us certainty that I could have seen the moon. Unless somebody goes with the telescope, but those who do go with the telescope, they expect local sighting as well. So if it's not seen locally with the telescope, then it's, or with any like binoculars or any other tools, if it's not seen locally, they don't accept that either. So they expect local sighting. In any case, if we do not see it and no one nearby sees it, then we complete the month, another opportunity to in fact fast and have our dua mustajab, another iftar time where we can have another time of answering of dua. للصائم عند ربه للصائم فرحتان. There's two things that God would make a fasting person happy with. One is at the time of iftar, and one is at the meeting with their Lord. This is how beautiful fasting is. And time of iftar, some people think it's because of the eating, because you can eat. No, it's because another time of answering of dua. It's a very special time. Utilize the time of iftar for your special du'as. If you have special needs that you want from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that is a very good time to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He answers, inshallah, He will answer your dua. Now, given the circumstances, I advise mu'mineen and mu'minat, there are du'as that are recommended for the last night of the month of Ramadan, and there is a dua that is for farewelling the month of Ramadan. The dua of the last night, you can recite it tonight, because tonight is what the last night applies for. Tomorrow night is not the last night of the month of Ramadan. Yes? Tomorrow night would be the first night of the month of Shawwal, the first night of Eid. That's in Islam, the days start, or the new calendar, a new day, new month, starts from sunset. So as the sun sets tomorrow night, if we don't have any reports of sighting of the moon nearby where it gives us certainty, then we fast tomorrow, and tomorrow night as the sun sets, it will be the sunset of the end of the month of Ramadan, the end of the last day, and it will be the beginning of the new day and the beginning of the new month, the month of Shawwal. It will be Laylatul Eid, and that is why it's recommended after Salatul Maghrib in the night of Eid to start the Tahleel, the famous takbirat of Eid, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar. It is recommended from after Salatul Maghrib, Salatul Isha and Salatul Fajr, and after Salatul Eid on the day of Eid. So from tomorrow night we'll be starting the takbirat all the way until after Salatul Eid, and Dhuhrain as well. Ihtiyat is to also after Dhuhrain do, which is mustahab anyway, it's a recommended thing to do the takbirat, recite the takbirat. As for Eid al-Adha, it continues for 3 days. After every salat and Eid al-Adha, for 3 days you do the takbirat of Salatul Eid, because it's the 10, 11 and 12. They're significant days in the for the pilgrims, for the Hujjaj. That's why they continue for 3 days. Any questions on what we've discussed so far? Any? Yes. Sorry, a bit louder if you can. What's considered safar? And this is impossible here, like we drive 1 hour, Okay, what's considered traveling or safar that you would break your fast and pray qasr and so on? From the borders of your city or your metropolitan area. If a city grows big enough to become one big metropolitan area, so it's all included, from the borders of that you travel the distance of in miles 15 miles 15 miles from the border of your is that correct? I'm used to, sorry?
Give or take 15 miles. So
15 miles.
The border of your
metropolitan area. Now you mentioned that Orlando is a very big metropolitan area, but nowadays we drive with cars too. You know, we don't travel on our feet and on camels, so it's still very easy, relatively. Yeah.
Therefore, the 15 miles was still around the car.
Yeah, you have to go from the border. So the border is outside, whichever. If you're going up south, I would say the border would be, up north, the border would be where you finish, say, Sanford, for example. After Sanford, when you start Deltona and so on, that's where you start counting. Down south, I would say Kissimmee or something, if I'm not mistaken. Kissimmee would be the end of the metro. Celebration, yeah. So where it's and the best way to look at it is look at the maps. They have a difference in color between the metropolitan and rural. Google Maps has two different colors. They have the color of the metropolitan areas is one color, and rural areas are different color. So if you look at that, it will show you where you start the rural area. That's when you start counting. Yeah.
Some brothers have a question. Based on what we know today, right now,
Yeah.
program for?
As of now, unless we have a confirmed sighting nearby that gives us yaqeen, tomorrow we'll have a regular Jum'ah, Salatul Jum'ah, and evenings iftar, and Laylatul Eid we'll have the dua of wida'. Tomorrow we'll be reciting dua al-wida', inshallah. No problem. Any other questions? Okay, so inshallah we will update the community with anything that may come up, but as of now we will tomorrow is the last day of the month of Ramadan, the 30th day. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for another opportunity and ability, in fact, to complete the iddah. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who are forgiven and who receive His special mercy in this holy month. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us gain what was intended through siyam of the month of Ramadan, which is taqwa, to help us gain more and more taqwa, which is from the hearts. Therefore we ask Him to have purified our hearts, and if not, to purify all of our hearts before the month of Ramadan is over. We ask Him to make us amongst those who listen to what's said and follow what's best. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, wa sallallahu wa sallam ala Sayyidina wa Nabiyyina Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Before I forget, if I may request mu'minina mu'minat, for all the family members and those who in fact passed away from the family members of those who sponsored the iftar of all the nights of this month of Ramadan until tonight and tomorrow night, inshallah, I ask all mu'minina mu'minat to not only, and this is a request, if you can, please do that. If not, do the least. At least we recite Fatiha for them, but if we can, pay sadaqat on their behalf. If you can pay sadaqat on behalf of those who passed away from the family members of those who sponsored the iftar, it would be a wonderful idea that you would give them a lot more than the Fatiha, but at least do the Fatiha ma'a salat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Bismillah. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم Also, another reminder, Zakatul Fitra is obligatory before Salatul Eid, anytime before Salatul Eid. And if you want to start putting it aside from now, you can. Either put it aside or put it in the boxes. I believe they have a box for general Zakatul Fitra and they have one for Sada. The reason we separate the Sada is because Sayyid can only receive Zakat from Sayyid. Therefore, if we have Sada, it'll help those who are needy from Sada. So we do have the boxes. If anyone wants to start putting their Zakatul Fitra, it would be easier, the lighter on you, inshallah. How much it is, people ask me. It's been a few years, every year it's $10, inflation, and so on. $10 suffices for poor families, put it this way. If you're eating very cheap food, $10 still suffices. But if you're eating expensive food, then you have to pay at least $15, maybe even more. And I say it without hesitation because I don't even consider 15 enough for myself. So the reason being is, I'm not saying I'm rich, sorry, don't get me wrong. What I am saying is we don't eat cheap stuff. We mostly eat very expensive stuff. And the hadith and the ayah, in fact, but the hadith that is interpreting the ayah tells us that it should be an average of what you feed your family. من أوسط ما تطعمون أهليكم. So an average of what you feed your family is what you should put, and based on the 3 kilos of that is what they determine how much it is. So I would say if you go with 15, it would be safer. But if you cannot afford that and you think 10 is enough for your family, then 10 would be enough. I mean, for each individual in your family. Please make sure you remember each individual in the family. Yes.
There's a question on if somebody is visiting you the night of Eid.
Ahsan. So there is this always, this has been brought up many times. If somebody is visiting you on the night of Eid, do they count as members of your family, and does it mean that you are in charge of their Zakatul Fitra? If they become part of your responsibility from then on, or at least at that moment, that you're in charge of their livelihood at that point, their house, their home, like the shelter, food and everything, you're in charge of that. And that could be continuous. If that's the nature of that visit, then they do become part of your responsibility and you pay Zakat al-Fitra for them. But if it's just them coming to visit you and you are gonna just have iftar together, or even if they end up staying over the night, it's not just because they slept, but it's not part of your responsibility. What used to happen in the old days, and this is where it comes from, a daif would come and would be coming from a different city, for example, and they come and now they reside with you. They would become your responsibility. While they're in this city, they are your responsibility. You feed them, you give them the place to sleep, you're taking care of them. That kind of daif, you are responsible for their Zakat al-Fitra. But if it's not that, then you're not responsible. I hope that answers. No more questions. So inshallah, until tomorrow, those of you who are able to make it to Salat al-Jum'ah, otherwise tomorrow for iftar, we'll remember each other in our prayers, inshallah. Don't forget to pray for one another, because that's more powerful. To pray for others is more powerful than praying for yourself. Inshallah, you remember myself as well, and all mu'mineen and mu'minat. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli.